Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out insightsinsound.com for a full list of our podcasts and YouTube series.
Individual. We learn as we go, we fall, we get back up, and we get pushed outside of our comfort zones. In this panel, they'll be sharing stories and perspectives on turning goofs into learning experiences. Please welcome our moderator for the panel, writer, musician, and multimedia producer, Liston Keller.
Thank you all for coming. We'll do a brief introduction of our panelists. I'm not going to read off credentials or anything like that, because otherwise that will be like the whole hour. And the far side over there, appropriately enough, is Mr. Keb Mo. Yeah. Next to him, the illustrious Mr. David Morgan. Yeah. Mr. Rick Allen. Ross Hogarth. And last but certainly not least, Rafa Sardina. Rafa! We are so happy to see you all here, because what that means to us is that we're not the only ones faking it. So what we're really going to talk about here is just the idea that every single one of us is making it up as we go, building the bridge as you walk on it, all that stuff. And because of that, what we have discovered all along is that everybody shares the same issues. We're all afraid that we're not good enough. We're all afraid that we're not the smartest person in the room, which hopefully is a relief. But we're all just figuring it out as we go, and a lot of us have stories about basically being dropped in on the deep end, saying yes when we have no clue what the hell we're going to do or how we're going to do it. Problem solving. So my thought was, if we have people here who, by at least appearances, you think are successful, some of us maybe, I don't know, then if we can share with you kind of stuff that we've been through and the fumbling and figuring it out as we go that we've done, then maybe you'll all see that really we're all traveling that same road. So I don't know, let's just start with something here. I know that Ken in particular has written an entire book on fumbling through his life and actually managing to make something of himself, right?
Just barely.
You want to summarize briefly for anybody in this room who doesn't know how you got started? You weren't really supposed to be the producer on that album, right?
I'm not sure. Maybe they had plans that I didn't know about, but I was hired as an engineer for Rumors Out. And it was the first big album I had done. And fortunately, my background was I did my homework. And this is the most important thing. I learned what all microphones sounded like. I knew signal path, how it flowed, and I knew what reverb was, and I had good ears, I guess. And I got into this thing with Fleetwood Mac, and they said, I was hoping I could just be an engineer and be the fly on the wall, but they had other ideas for me. But I had to rely on my talents that I had trained, I guess, and that we all have, to solve a problem. I've been put into a concert. I did the Songbird, I had to figure out how to do that. I did the Tusk album, the marching band. I had to figure out how to record a marching band. I didn't know they marched when they played.
Well, it's
So you guys can't march. Never can. So yeah, so I've been very lucky where I've been, and I continually have very good luck. So I don't know. That's what I got to say.
Well, and I know that all of us really have kind of traveled that same path, just kind of like starting out at something and then all of a sudden realizing just how deep we've gotten ourselves in, right? Rick, you told me an interesting story recently about buying your first synthesizer?
Yeah, you're going to embarrass me. Thanks a lot. Yeah, talking
We're here.
Talking about fade, man. Back when I desperately, when synthesizers were first starting to take off, because I'm a sound designer, I just like weird noises. And I absolutely, this was the late 70s, and I wanted a MIDI Moog so bad, and I stumbled into a music store, and the only thing they had was a Harp Odyssey. And I started playing with it. I didn't know anything about synthesizers, so I started playing around, and it made this interesting little silly noise. And then, so I didn't have the ability to ask anybody. I was too embarrassed to ask anybody any questions about it. It was like, I'm going to buy this thing. And it makes a cool noise. So I took it home to discover that that was the only noise it made because it was broken. So I spent two months in the repair shop before I could actually learn the synthesizer.
Nice, well done. And David, I know you have interesting stories about sort of all of a sudden discovering you were a live sound guy.
I was under the impression that I was a guitar player and singer for a long time, and I was playing in a band in Woodstock, New York, with a good friend of mine, and the band broke up. When the band broke up, he went back to LA with my friend, Leon, and he went back to playing in a band called El Chicano, which in the mid-'70s was a pretty big band here in LA. And he was the original drummer in that band, and the guy who replaced him was driving his Ford Pinto around and got into an accident, broke his left foot, couldn't play his hi-hat.
Pinto didn't blow up?
Yeah, so Leon went back in the band and invited me out to come out and work with him. And they had a little studio. It was a wood frame building right at the corner of Sunset and Vine, right behind the UCB Bank building that was in the town of Inferno. And there was a little demo studio in there, and so I had 3340s at home like everybody else did. And when we moved out there, we created this little demo studio, and I had no illusions that I was a recording engineer or anything. I was just a guitar player with a tape recorder. But one day the El Chicano had a gig, and the guy who normally did their audio, they had like 3 roadies, and one guy did sound, and he got sick. And the guys in the band, Bobby Espinosa, the leader of the band, said, would you come down and mix the shows for us? Because I had been doing demos for them, and they kind of liked what I was putting on tape for. Well, I'd never mixed a live show, except for owning the PA that we played in, used to play in bars in Boston with a 6-channel custom tuck and roll silver metal plate 100-watt mixer with a couple of trainer cabinets that we used to cart around town to play with our local gigs in Boston. So I asked them, I said, okay, well, where's the gig? And I said, well, it's at USC. And I said, well, where is it? They said, it's out in the quad. Well, the damn gig was for like 7,000 people, right? And I'd never mixed a live show in my life. And so when they said, can you do this? I said, oh, sure. And because like that's the catchword in show business is yes. If somebody asks you a question, you say yes. You never say no. And then you frequently learn how to do what you just agreed to do. It takes a lot of woodshedding and it takes a lot of chutzpah, but it's the way we all got our first jobs. Anyway, this show went really great. And I even got a letter from the mayor of Boston telling me Los Angeles telling me what a great job I did at the show. So that kind of opened the door for me, and that was completely by accident, and I had no idea what I was doing. So sometimes life is serendipitous and works out for the best.
Well, you just put your finger on something that I have telling a lot of the artists that I work with. I run a nonprofit. It's called the Artist Brain Collective, and we work with students and artists who deal with neurodiversity issues, which means pretty much all of us. And a lot of times, they're surprised to find out that we all deal with what we call imposter syndrome. And the delineation that you just put down there was exactly, first of all, we always say yes. Half the time when we say yes, we have no idea what we're doing. The difference is the inner monologue of, I have no idea what I'm doing, and everybody's going to figure it out. versus I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out, or anybody figures out that I don't know what I'm doing. And that is, I think, the secret to really just, doing your homework, maybe going on the internet, although, YouTube University has just as many wrong answers as right. But I think, that's pretty much how we've all figured it out, right? I know you have.
Absolutely. I'm the ultimate faker.
And yet, somehow or another, you managed to make it work too, right?
And you're very right, what you just said, having that mindset of saying, they are going to figure out before, they are going to find out before they figure out. Having the opposite mindset, always thinking, I'm going to figure it out before they can, find out. And it does actually work because that's real life. Most things that we do in life, we don't truly know what's the right path, other than actually the technical aspects. It's good to have a good technical background, so
Sometimes.
at least, yes, no, sometimes, but
It's good not to know.
but it's good to know the technical, background, so you don't have to think about technicalities. So you don't have to think about technical aspects ever, And so you erase it from your head and you just act on instinct, right? So that's probably what you had to do with your live show. You just acted on instinct that very moment, and it was probably one of the best pieces of work you ever did. And sometimes it does happen that way.
It might have been the most fun I ever had as a musician up until that point, mixing that show for 78,000 people outdoors. It was just so cool. Basically, Naltex, faders this size, big brown plastic things
Big light.
that you push speed into submission. And I think there were 3 of them that were all linked together, so I had 18 films. Pretty cool.
Love it.
Well, I think internal confidence is crucial. Not like we all have pointed to not knowing, because you don't know how to do something that you haven't ever done before, probably. I didn't. But I think one of the keys is to have, there's a certain internal confidence that I had about things that when I was, I came out of the Merchant Marines as a kid. I came out to California, and then I had an opportunity to become a guitar tech. And I grew up playing guitar, drums, so I considered myself a musician. And the epiphany I had at a very young age is that I wasn't going to make it as a musician, that at 40 years old, I might be in a crushed velvet suit in the Midwest playing to a coffee or a bar, to drums before people throwing shit at me. So, that was not going to happen. And I ended up, so the very first job I was given or offered was to become a guitar tech for a guy named David Lindley, who played with Jackson Browne. And what Lindley did is he handed me a 12-string Vox Mando guitar, and he went like, and he detuned everything. So the whole guitar was slacked. So there was no tuning whatsoever. And he handed me back the guitar, and he said, I want this tuned by ear. I was at a place called Alley Rehearsal in North Hollywood. And so he handed me back the 12-string Vox Mando guitar, which is a 12-string instrument that goes octave, 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 unison, unisons, and said, put this in E flat, and we'll be playing in B. And it wasn't I had no common stroke tuner or anything. And I was so nervous, I literally sweat all over that instrument while they were playing. But because I was a musician inherently, I'd grown up playing, guitar, French horn, other instruments, I knew inside myself that I could figure out where E flat was concerning on the neck relative to them playing, it was B or F, whatever they were playing, it was some key that was unrelated. And there was this internal confidence that I had that I will do this because I wanted the gig that much. This was like an opportunity. And so I put that thing in tune. I sweat all over the instrument. It was really gross when I handed it back to Lindley. And he was impressed that I did it. And then, from there, so I think there's this thing that, and the part about fake it, it's kind of an interesting saying, but
I don't know about, there are jobs where I've gotten bitten in the ass by the assistant who says he knows something. Hey man, where's, plug some into the insert point. He has no idea where he's putting the patch cables. And he's lurched over the patch tray. And then I'll turn to the guy, so I'll just finish this little, diatribe with, don't ever say you know how to do something to someone that knows that you don't know. Because they'll bust you so quick.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance to telling the truth too. I don't know, but I'm going to figure that out. I'd much rather hear that than I know. And I'm going to find out what you don't know quicker than you're going to want me to find out. So that's the other side of it. So that internal confidence that I had early on, I learned that I had to admit when I didn't know something so I could learn. Because there were times when, particularly, I was worked for Lindley and other guys, Rycooter and people that you guys don't even know about probably unless you're as old as us. But regardless, and I worked for the Mac, and these guys, Lindsay was going to find out what you didn't know super quick, man, and he wasn't going to be happy about it. Same with Mick, and yeah.
Ross, one that I got to show him what I knew. He couldn't believe that I used a stopwatch to figure the DEL's settings.
What Ken's saying, just for the if you count to 11 and something's playing, and you count beats to 11, you'll get the milliseconds for the quarter note. Just FYI. You can go to music math, but then you can look on music math and it'll tell you the tempo. But
Russ, what I was saying, it's interesting because you talk about internal confidence, and I actually, some of my great growth starts have come from internal panic, from knowing that I've said I can do something and not necessarily having the confidence, but having the determination not to let somebody I told I could do something down. It was that fear of failure that drove me to a lot of the really high points in my career advancement.
That happened to me too. My first gig in pro audio, so to speak, I wandered into this studio called Cherokee and asked if I could have a job. And they said, yeah, we need a tech. Yeah, I can do that, sure, yeah. And I knew a little bit about aligning a 2-inch machine and, stuff like that. And then they said, yeah, we've got all these, we've got 4 Trident A-range consoles. There's only 13 made in the entire world. And they said, yeah, you know how to fix these modules? Can I watch? And then 3 days later, somebody drops a Neumann U87 on the ground. And they just put it on my bench. They said, here, fix it. And, I looked at it, and the first thing I did was I called up a guy I knew named Stephen Paul, who was the resident microphone genius, and I said, oh. And, so to your point, don't be afraid to say yes, but also don't be afraid to ask for help. Because that's the big thing right there. If people think you're arrogant and you're trying to fake it, they're not going to be very happy. But if they see that you're trying to learn something, and they see that you're trying to get better at what you do, you're going to find everybody's going to be a supporter in some way or another.
Well, I look at it in the simple analogy, you got a favorite hat, I'm not wearing it, but I have a couple of my favorite hats. So you take that hat and you throw it over the fence that's, you're not going to leave your hat on the other side of the fence. You're going to have to figure out how to go over and get it. So that's part of what life is. It's you toss your hat over the fence and okay, I'm gonna have to figure out how to go get it. And that's what kind of for me, my whole career has been built on. My very first business card, I had a business card made when I wanted to produce. It said, I called my production company at the time, Desiring Productions. And I give people my card with my number on it. And it would say Desiring Productions. And then my inner joke to myself when that didn't really fly. My production company that I've had since the 80s, my name is Hogarth. When I grew up, everyone in New York gets his nickname. You don't give yourself your own nickname. If you do, it's not cool. You get taxed. It's a social faux pas to do that. So my nickname was you can't call a guy Hoagie on the East Coast because that's like a sandwich.
So they called me Hoax with a K, H-O-K-E-S. That was my football nickname, Hoax. But for me, I thought always Productions was kind of a hoax because you need a great artist, a great song, and it's kind of a hoax. We're like kind of like, you know, that's kind of fits in line with like you're kind of faking it, you know. So I called my production company Hoax, H-O-A-X Productions. Now, politically, it's not such a great word, but it still is my production company. That comes before the politics. So yeah, it was sort of this, you know, be it before you do it kind of vibe, you know. I don't know. That's kind of the deal.
I think that is really, it's really part of it, isn't it? Just almost envisioning yourself in that place where you can be that successful, you know, and just, I mean, you know, there's this big thing about anxiety, right? Like we all have anxiety. We all worry about like, oh, what if I screw up? What if I, you know, and all you're really doing is you're predicting the future, and you're kind of almost preordaining the future. And so, you know, I've been sort of working towards this mindset for years now of instead of worrying about what if I screw up, just envisioning like, you know, saying, well, you know, what happened the last time I was in this position? You know, did the world fall apart? No, I actually figured it out, didn't I? And I think if you can adopt that kind of mindset, it goes a long way towards just giving you the confidence to think your way through it. Because that's the big thing right there, is thinking your way through the problem. We're all problem solvers, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, yeah, you predispose yourself for failure. If you start thinking, I'm not going to be good enough for this, or I'm not going to. And also, you have to follow your past record, right? You have been able to do it successfully previously. You need to have high hopes. You're going to be able to do the same or even better. So that's always, you know, and when you were saying, you know, I don't have the answer. That's a good thing. That's okay. It's okay. That's the hardest thing to learn, to know that you don't know. I mean, to be able to say to somebody that you don't know, which is not really you don't know. You don't know yet, but you have certainty you're going to know. You're going to find out how you're going to come out of this, you know, situation, either with a music arrangement or with a production decision or with a technical aspect about, you know, the engineering and the sound of the project or a song, even with a vocal coach, you know, working with a vocalist and a vocal coach. I mean, you need to always have this mindset of, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And something good is going to come out of this. Because there are always those phases of insecurity happen not just at the beginning of a project. They happen halfway through the project, 3/4 through the project, towards the end of the project, when you're almost finishing the project. Yeah, they happen all the time. I remember this anecdote from Ed Charney. He will always say, like, okay, I start a mix, and then I'm like, okay, what the hell am I going to do with this mix? He gets going. The most important thing is to get going, to start it, to get started and get going. Then he starts mixing it. He spends, you know, a few minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and he starts thinking, oh, this is coming out good. This is going in the right direction. I'm liking this. An hour later, he's like, wow, this is really good. An hour later, he's like saying, like, I'm a fucking genius. And he says, awesome. And 45 minutes later, he's like, fuck, this sucks. I'm going to find out. This is terrible. What am I going to do? And you overcome that. You spend another hour on it, and then all of a sudden, in your head, it becomes good again. And you haven't even really changed that much. But it becomes good again in your head. It's really your head mixing. It's not even the real mixing. It's your freaking head mixing, like formal mixing. You're doing your mix and your head is mixing something else while thinking something else. And at the end, everything's good. You finish the mix and you polish it, and yeah, mission accomplished. So
What he's saying is your mind's a bad neighborhood. Don't go alone there. You're going to bump yourself.
Exactly, just stay away, yeah.
Stay out of your edge. You're going to bump yourself.
Well, you know, so it's like, to me, it's like being a good husband. I mean, you better be able to figure out the answers. That your wife's going to throw something at you, you go, you know, I don't know, but I will figure it out. You know, that's the bottom line. I will figure it out, Just let it sit here for a minute.
We'll give her a vacuum cleaner for your anniversary.
Doesn't matter what relationship it's, you might be right is a great saying.
I think it's important to learn how to use anxiety as a motivator rather than intimidating. We've all been in a situation where we said we know how to do something and you better learn how to do it the night before, you know? It's a great motivator. Fear is a fantastic motivator. Fear of failure is an even more fantastic motivator, at least in my career. You got to be able to take the negativity and turn it into something positive to really transform that energy into what is actually going to get you from point A to point B. And the anxiety never really goes away. I mean, I mixed one of the biggest shows ever in the world with Paul Simon in Central Park in 1991 for 750,000 people. And I was scared to death. You know, and my buddy Phil Ramone standing right next to me. And, you know, it's Phil Ramone standing right next to me. If I screw it up, I might as well walk naked through the crowd and go immolate myself somewhere. So before the first drum beat, before all the doom hit those first drums in that show, when we started doing Obvious Child, and the whole center of New York City was rumbling from those sordid drums, I was scared to death before we turned that BA on. And then I look over and Phil goes, he says, "It sounds fucking great." And we danced all the way through the show. We had so much fun. And poor Roy Halley was in the truck trying to mix for the HBO thing live. And we're supposed to be talking to him on the intercom and things. He's, you know, Roy liked to try to mix front of house from the truck, you know. And about halfway through the first song, Phil takes the headset he has on the intercom to the truck, puts it down and says, "Fuck this," and danced all the way through the show. We had the greatest, that was one of the greatest nights of my life.
Yeah.
Well, I think what Daniel's getting at here,
Just as far as fear, for me, I'm scared shitless a lot of times walking into the studio, big string dates and whatever. And it causes like preparation. I love preparation actually. Now, a lot of times I didn't get that, you know, on the road and stuff, but I learned that I better be prepared for all things to fail at all times. You know, because, you know, when an amp goes down, you don't have a spare or a cable and all those things. So preparation is a really good thing to look forward into the problems that you're going to be encountering. And a lot of that is because I don't want to fail. The fear of the failure causes me to think forward into problem solving before the problems happen. And then when they come up, you've already solved them and you're ready for the solution. And so you anticipate things that maybe never happen, but you're ready for that. And, you know, my wife is better at that because, you know, she's as far as at home. But, and then one last thought is just remember, we're not curing cancer and no animals are hopefully going to get injured on our experiments. So don't take it all so seriously that you become so wound up that you're really not fun to be around, because that's in the end. No one wants to work with someone that's not really fun to be around, at least in my experience.
So they're basically saying live in fear.
You know,
Live in fear.
that's
Not promoting. No, actually, what you were saying, my biggest school doing what I do was actually doing live sound. Actually, that's the first thing I ever did. Even though I did studio work early on, I was only 16 years old. But from then on, I didn't have an opportunity to be in the studio. I was just doing live sound, live production, live sound, touring. And it's the biggest school in the world. I mean, even to become a recording engineer in a studio, I mean, it's amazing. I would actually send every recording school, you know, engineering, you know, student on tour, at least for a few months, in order for them to become successful. Even producers, I was sending them on the road. I mean, on the road, I mean, you are on your own, you have to rely on preparation. Yeah.
it's true right there as well.
no rewind button. I mean, it's to me, it's the coolest environment in the world. But you know, I spent my last 21 years with James Taylor, so and I got 21 years in with Paul Simon. So I've been lucky enough to end up in really nice environments as far as work conditions go. But it's the most fun you can possibly have behind an audio.
And it's in the immediate satisfaction because you're getting the immediate feedback from the audience. While in the studio, we have to wait. I mean, we have to satisfy ourselves only, with the feedback we get from what we're doing in that very moment, and then we have to wait a year till it gets released.
I have 15,000 critics every night.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, your job, you're actually performing literally naked, which then I said that to my
Stark
head.
naked.
Yeah, and then I said it in my head, and I go, I don't want to visualize it.
Not a 75-year-old band. Yeah.
But I will say that, you guys brought up one interesting point, which was, and Rick and I know we've had this conversation before, what you call the client face, right? Like, while you're figuring it out in the back of your head, you're going, but all the client, all anybody else sees is, yeah, man, I got this. And
Get this.
yeah, and that takes you so far in terms of being able to sort it out yourself. You can make a lot out of that because really they're reading your energy. And if your energy is like, look at this guy's gonna fuck it up big time, then yeah, you're gonna fuck it up big time, pretty much. So, being able to maintain that confidence that, I've done this before, somehow or another figured it out, I'm gonna figure it out again. Goes a long way, doesn't it?
Another thing about making it till you make it kind of thing. And one of the things that I think is important, at least it was in my career, was surrounding yourself with smart people and finding a mentor. I don't know about you guys, but I would not be where I am without someone helping me, being kind and letting me look over their shoulders, learn from them.
Every one of us on this stage, I would say.
Yeah. So I would say it's very important to find that mentor and surround yourself with.
Even asking for advice on the simple things, even business advice.
Although
All of it.
knowing when to ask the advice, not in the middle of a mix. That's sort of it. And also, timing and reading the room, being part of the vibe of the room.
See, that's why Daniel asked me to be on this panel, was to pull okay, we have these guys, and then you could be down here, and you'll, because I need to be around people that are way smarter than me anyway. So it just makes.
Look at my life.
Any questions, right?
So I think we've got about 10 minutes before they're going to start clearing us out of here. So I want to open it up very soon here to questions. If anybody's got any, there's a microphone right over there, and you can make your way up there and ask questions. Who's got questions?
Actually,
It's a question.
Okay, right there.
can I just bring up something that you have brought up to me in the past and has helped me greatly? Is you said to me once, start ugly.
Start ugly, but
Whatever
start.
your fears are, start.
That is. Thank you, Charles. That's actually one of my personal mantras, because I am as guilty as anyone of procrastination. And procrastination is not always because, I just don't feel like it. Procrastination is often because fear of failure, right? Or fear of putting your work out there in front of people. And I'm a pro procrastinator, okay? I know this for a fact. And so for me, being able to just nudge myself to say, okay, just do it, just put it out there, start it. I started a podcast that way. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm 160 some odd episodes into it now. And obviously somebody's watching, but we get I think 20,000 hits a month. So if you haven't seen it, it's called Insights in Sound. You can find it somewhere. It's out there.
We call procrastination sloth in 5 syllables. So, but, actually, on a serious note, there's a character, great philosopher, Goethe, Goethe,
That's it.
who has a quote about commitment. And it talks about, until one is commitment, there's a chance to draw back. Always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which will kill countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one decides to do something and gets committed, then providence moves too. whether you call it God or the universe, providence moves too. It gets on our side, and all things, matter of unforeseen and seen, come our way. And then he says, anything you can do or dream, begin it. Begin it now. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And that's tattooed behind my eyelids because I believe that. That one is, when I become committed, I'm no longer going to blame the situation. I'm not going to blame anybody but myself for the ineffectiveness of what might not happen or happen. But things move in my direction, and they've occurred in my whole life that I would never otherwise have dreamt by the commitment to do something. And literally, that commitment gets me to start whatever it is that I'm committed to. And then we say that failure is not an option. It's just what sometimes occurs, then we move through that. So, that quote is very poignant to me in my life, that commitment is a big part of what I do and everything that I tend to, when I focus on that.
And how do we define failure? How do we define failure? Because you say failure is not an option, right? Is it failure, or is it just like,
It doesn't happen.
you face plant and you get back up?
Yeah, but you make sure, failure is okay. We all learn from failure.
Yeah.
Just make sure you don't fail the same way twice.
And most failure comes out of a lack of commitment anyway. So it is very true, there are like two types of failure, the failure from lack of commitment and the failure that's just destiny and something doesn't pan your way or doesn't pan actually the project's way. Maybe the project is amazing, it's wonderful, but it's not a success. What's that? Failure? Maybe to some people is, maybe to you it isn't because you did the most amazing piece of work. So you have to stop worrying about, the definition of, what people call failure, because it's usually not your failure. It's, a different type of failure, right?
Well,
Market failure, how is it?
And then conversely, define, we create our own definitions of failure and of success. And the biggest challenge that a lot of us have, especially with the whole imposter syndrome thing, is we had this definition of success that's comparing ourselves to somebody else's success. And we create this definition of success that is completely unattainable. So therefore, what's the end result? We fail because we didn't reach that ridiculously high goal.
Which has become more intense in the social media world too.
Yeah.
One of the things is surround yourself with the community. I mean, we're all in a creative community and we can support ourselves. I mean, one of the things, Daniel, you're starting to do, we talked about the creative brain, the whole concept there. It's because some of the Zoom meetings that I've been on with you, it's just been, you start realizing everybody has some of the same fears and some of the same trepidations. So you start feeling more comfortable. And so being a community and helping somebody else out is, I think, important for all of us. Not to get too philosophical or anything.
Good question.
I'd take them on. Not good at seeing it. So most of what we've been talking about today is about how you didn't know how to do something, then you figured it out and you did it, and you succeeded. Now you touched on failure a little bit. Of course, you have not always succeeded. So when have you tremendously and terribly failed?
We're not going to tell you. The art form there, I think, at least speaking for myself, the art form is to fail upward, right? Like, oh, I screwed that up, but I learned something. And really, there are times when, you screw up to the point where you really have to be naked in public with it in that sense. But most of the time, it's really, it's something that you can turn into a success. I failed at this, but I learned something that I can then take to another situation.
The earlier you fail, the better, obviously, in any career.
Saves budget too.
So I think that your early experiences, it's kind of like a dichotomy. On one side, you need to not fail, so you are valued and you progress with your career. But the earlier you screw up on some things, in some situations, the earlier the faster you're gonna recover, and the faster you're gonna be able to get better as you do. And I'll tell you, the real learning experiences are the failures, the mistakes that you made, and you go like, shit, you learn like 10 things out of one.
Like, here's a specific for me. This goes back to an early production, because I came up as a guitar tech, a roadie, got into the studio, became an engineer, and then I knew I needed to produce records, and I wasn't yet a producer, even though I was working with producers that would leave the room and go away for a week, and I would end up, but I wasn't the producer. You don't get to say you're the producer if you don't end up with the title that says producer. That just doesn't work that way. So even though you might think you are, I go find a band, I found this band, and I go into the studio I know, and I end up a studio that I knew how to get a really good sound out of. And I got a really good sound on this band, and they had a really good song, cut that song, helped them get a record deal. And they weren't from here, they were from Birmingham, Alabama. So they send me down to Birmingham, Alabama, where there is a decent studio, and I don't know the studio, and I got put in a box, like a weird box. And this was a rock band, and they needed a bigger sound. This is like, early 90s, big sound. Now I'm in a box, and I can't get the sound out of the studio that I want. And I end up making really boxy, shitty sounding music. And I know that it's not doing it, but I'm gonna push through it. And I got fired off the record because, and intuitively I knew, but I was pissed. Like, I thought of the deal and now I'm fired. But when I was able to step back and look at it, I was put in a position to fail. And I knew intuitively, without saying, no, I don't want to go record there or anything. So I didn't advocate for myself on that. And years later, I bumped into a guy who I've actually helped make a record in the last year, who was the A&R guy that fired me. He was all apologetic. And I go, no, man, I deserved it. That shit sucked. Like, the arrangements were good, but the recording blew. And there was no way to salvage it. There's sometimes records are supposed to be made the way they're supposed to be made. That's just something that all these guys know. You can't go into a little box and get a big, huge sound out of it. Maybe you can these days, but back then there were no plugins. This was analog. So anyway, I learned a lot out of that. I learned a lot about myself too. I learned about when I say yes to something, that doesn't mean that if I put myself in a situation to fail, that yes is not going to equate to success. It just isn't.
Actually, you learn to say no. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing to learn, when to say no.
Yeah, we hate to turn down work.
And I had a very similar situation doing live sound. I remember we were touring in France, and we had like shitty power, really, really shitty power. And I knew that we were, setting up ourselves for failure. It was a pretty big gig, like 7,000 people, something. And I do remember that I was thinking, like, my God was telling me, go get to the promoter, he was right there, and demand that they can bring like a unit, bring like a generator. This really sucks. We're gonna cross and burn. I did that. And midway through the show, all the shit starts like turning off and all the digital stuff. And I remember the show really sucked. And I remember towards the end of the show, the manager, this manager confronted me and were like, you're like, hey, really, what's going on? And what was I gonna say? I mean, I really set myself for failure for not saying no. We need an extra 10, 15 minutes. Let's not go on. We need to sort this out. And, that's the biggest lesson you learn, when and how to say no.
In life, you can get caught up with the show must go on thing in life. I mean, I go to my own extremes. As a guitar player and as a mixer, I've never, ever missed a show in 61 years. I've been as sick as a dog, and I've done every single show. probably that wasn't the greatest idea. In addition to making me sicker, it probably made people sick around me. But I big shows with a big trash can right here with food poisoning, just like lean over and just soldier on through it. But the worst failures I've had recently in my career, and I've been blessed with an incredible group of people that I've worked for, but I put myself in situations where I shouldn't have ever put myself. I took a gig with this one guy as a Russian singer, and what was I doing? It was terrible. I mean, it was terrible from the start. It never got any better, and nobody was happy, and we all went home and cashed our paychecks and said it still wasn't enough. Another time I took a job with a very well-known artist, but I didn't know, and let's be honest with ourselves, some of these shows people don't sing or play live. Come on, let's be honest. And I took a job with a band that was a playback show. And I didn't know when I took the job, and I got fired within 5 days because I made the declaration, I'm sorry, I don't do playback shows. They said, okay, goodbye, here's the door, see you later.
You just crushed my dreams here. I had no idea.
You get to keep the Grammy now. That's the only thing. We get to keep the Grammy.
I think we have been given the signal here that we have to wrap up. So any closing thoughts?
I can tell you that Richard Dashett, who was my co-producer, co-engineer, told me a very simple statement. He says, the art of being a good producer is knowing who to produce.
That's right.
And I thought that was a stupid thing to say, but it's the key.
Start with good quality, good material. And that's the thing too. I mean, and everybody knows this. You can take the worst song in the world, and you can spend millions on production, and you're going to have what we call a polished turd. You can take a really, really great song, and you can record it on your iPhone, and it's going to be a really great song. So yeah, start with good material. Everything else from that, easy.
Right after Fleetwood Mac, I got hired to do another band called Big Walk Waku. And I said, I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, and I'll make this same record. But then I found out that the guitar player couldn't play like Lindsey Buckingham. And the drummer couldn't play like Mick Fleetwood. And it's like, I didn't think this thing through. So I really polished the turd on that one.
And on that note, thank you, Ryan, for coming. Thank you to my family. That's done. Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.